And we're off. Morning, Adrian. How are
Good
you?
morning, Sean. How you doing?
I am good. Thank you very much for doing this. I've looked forward to this. Uh, People just joining us. If you don't know, Adrian and I have known each other 8, 9 years. I've been
Yeah.
part of
So,
her networking group for that long as well. So she's going to be a great guest because I know she's the energy she's going to bring and the topic we're going to discuss. She actually knows it intimately. But before we get to all that, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and welcome to another episode of Did You Know That? Question mark. This is the channel where I get to talk to interesting people about interesting things or annoying people about annoying things. Take your pick. And really depends on what side of the bed you might have woken up on today. For everybody just joining us, I want to thank you and hopefully urge you to subscribe along with the bell so you get notified each time a new video goes live. If you're a returning guest, thank you again for checking back in, and hopefully you find this one as enjoyable as the others. My name is Sean O'Rourke, and when I'm not talking as part of these video casts, I'm actually preparing businesses to be hacked as a cyber liability consultant. And if you really want to know more about that, we could talk about that offline. And this is a good friend, Adrian Miller. And Adrian, why don't you tell the folks what you do?
okay. And I got to tell you, I hope I'm going to fall over on the side of the interesting
Oh, you will.
episode.
I have no doubt.
And I also need to tell you, I'm kind of wired for sound this morning. I had a little more coffee than usual. And you know, I usually drink quite a bit. And I did something I don't usually do. I got up this morning, and because yesterday and the day, 2 days in a row, I didn't get outside at all.
Oof.
Oh, yeah. And so I got up and threw on a pair of sneakers and got out and hit the road and ran for just under 2 miles. Not very fast, but just saying,
The blood
all right.
pumping.
Yeah, and so I feel great. I feel
Good.
awesome, and there was a little mental jog. Just do that every day, and do not find yourself at your laptop at 6 a.m. You don't have to be at your laptop at 6 a.m. I am not a surgeon. There is no sales emergency at 6 a.m. Anyway, I'm a multipreneur. I learned that word from someone, and it kind of fits because I have multiple businesses, even though they tend to fit together. My oldest business is sales consulting and training. I work with solopreneurs all the way through to large companies. And then in quick succession, I write content, customized content for pretty much every type of business. I'm a partner in an integrated marketing company because content, of course, needs pictures and graphics and visuals. And I also run a networking community that Sean referenced before. So
Which is called Adrian's Network.
Adrian's
It really
Network.
is a network. I mean, at this point, you have 400 plus.
About that, yeah,
members?
yeah, yeah. And I
Well,
tend to use the word community. I
community?
don't know.
Okay.
I really feel like we have established some very robust relationships because we're much more than let's show up and either log into Zoom, or as we used to put our little butts in seats once a month and go around and say the same stuff. And even if once a week you go around and say the same stuff, we're really bonded, sometimes over the top level, where I use the word high touch, low pressure.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a lot of touches, but if you can
Virtual touches now.
Virtual touches, yeah. We'll be that way for a long time, I think. If you can groove with that, I think it's okay. But if you can carve out how you want to exist in our community.
Well, I mean, that's actually a good word for it because, and we'll get back to the topic at hand, but this is a good segue in that, I mean, I've been a member, this is 2020, so I've been a member since 2012, and there are a lot of people in there who have been members longer than I have. Almost right from the get-go. And they haven't gone anywhere. They continue to participate on a regular basis. So obviously it's working for them in some capacity.
Yeah.
and keeps them coming back and keeps them paying to come back because it's not
Yep.
free. And so
Yep.
they've made
Yep.
a commitment to it. But your multipreneur is what we're here to talk about. We're here to
Right.
talk about entrepreneurship,
Right.
which is, you know, when I was in school, that was not something that was taught. It was not something that was really talked about. And now my alma mater has a whole program about entrepreneurship, and they have summits, yearly summits, where they bring back people who have done their own businesses, you know, small and large.
Yeah.
So it is a real thing now, but it's still a scary thing for a lot of people. And so I'm hoping this conversation will help give some people some key insights of what it takes to start a business, again, any kind of business, and some of the tips, tricks, and you know, things to avoid as you go about your merry way to either becoming a local hero or, you know, Bill Gates, if you want. So the first question I have for you, I know your background, but I want people to get a sense. You have always have been in some capacity an entrepreneur, but you've also worked for companies.
Yeah. So I've been an entrepreneur for a really long time through really most of my adult working years. But I did have a stint in advertising and in a company, and I rose up and was successful and happy, and I loved it. I really loved it. However, I then had a child, and then I had a second child, and my schedule was very frenetic. Really, client-driven businesses. Anyone who's listening, out there who has a client-driven business, client fee-based, on demand, calls at all hours, meetings at all hours, and people being kind of insistent on your presence. Advertising is really all of those things. And so the ability to do that and also be a mom with a husband who traveled 50% of the time overseas to Southeast Asia really wasn't tenable, even with good childcare. So I decided, I don't know if I used the word entrepreneur. I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a business, and I'm going to do it for a year. And then when the kids are, I don't know, I guess I thought a year-old was like a grown-up, I'll be able to go back and do all this stuff. So I gave my company notice. I started a business in a way that probably nobody ever should. No real marketing or business plan. Kitchen table, actually dining room table. So long ago, guys, all of this technology that helps keep us all together and makes things, quite frankly, really friggin' easy, because you can actually do things in the middle of the night, was not available. But what I did instinctively, because back then I don't even know if we used the word networking, I reached out to business contacts I had, friends, literally friends, and said, hey, I started a business. This is what I'm going to do. Do you know anyone who could use any of these services? Maybe you can. 2 of them said yes. They worked in very large companies, and hence it started. So the first thing I think people should think about if they're thinking about embarking on being an entrepreneur is to know that if you don't have clients, you don't have a business. You have a hobby.
Yes.
I hate to sound harsh. I really do, but I must do that because I think people kid themselves. I think people are hell-bent on starting, and they get a lawyer, and they get a banker, and they get a CPA, and they get all this stuff, and create all this stuff, and they don't have a client, and they don't know how to get a client, and they don't think about using maybe an outside resource to do that, or don't have the wherewithal to have the outside resource to do that. You have to have clients. That's the first thing you have to have. Okay, assuming you have your product or service, but you have to have clients. So I guess instinctively also I knew that. I never articulated quite that firmly, but I knew I had to have somebody who wanted what I was selling and was willing to pay for it.
Yes, because clients equate to revenue, cash, money, the exact reason why most of us get to start a business.
No. Yeah.
And that goes for any size business in any kind of business, whether you're open a dry cleaner, a little retail shop, or a consulting or services-based business.
Yep.
You need that revenue.
Yep.
And you need to plan on how to get it. So you're sitting at the dining room table, no business plan, but you're making calls, you're reaching out.
Yeah.
How did, since you didn't have a track record sort of in being the business owner and offering the service, how did you convince the people that, hey, you need to take a chance on me and pay me for taking that chance?
So remember I said friends, they really were friends. And they hired me in for things that they knew that I knew how to do. They had to convince a long time ago, and they weren't the CEOs of these were global companies. They were not the CEOs. They were not really even C-level people at this time. We were all really young. These were early years.
Sure.
But they were able to put me into some projects where I could kind of prove that I knew what I was doing, and I kept doing additional projects with them. And so those two were easy to get. And then after that, probably the next skills you have to have is persistence, patience, mixed with a little tenacity. Because you're exactly right. You don't have a track record of success. With all due respect, right now it is fairly easy for me. I have a huge track record of experience and success, and loads of people who will give me testimonials and all those oodles, which I deserve, frankly. I've been doing this a long time. I work really hard to get there. But at the very beginning, you don't have that.
Right.
So you have to be persistent. You have to be able to articulate what makes you different and why working with you will make an improvement for that prospective client of yours. And you've got to live and breathe it and have the right words to convince somebody of it, and get them to hang in there with you, you know, and believe in yourself. But you have to be persistent, and you have to be passionate about what you do, and the tenacity has to be hardwired in, for sure.
So I don't know if anybody can get this sense right at the moment, but when you talk to Adrienne, you don't ever hear doubt. I don't think I've ever heard doubt in anything that you've really spoken about. But I have to imagine there were periods in the beginning, mostly, until you sort of started to ramp up and you built up that track record, that there were those little lulls maybe, or those little dips, or those events that happen to where you're like, is this the right thing to do? If you had those, what sort of got you through that above and beyond sort of the tenacity? Did you have to talk yourself through it? Did you just sort of plow through it?
Yeah. Even still, every once in a while, not that often, but once in a while, it's something not I call it, but I saw the phrase and it said, wow, that applies. A kind of imposter syndrome. When I'm asked to do something and I go and I see who else I'm doing it with, and they're kind of like the rock stars in business. I go, whoa, I cannot quite believe I'm on this panel, or I was invited to speak here, and am I really worthy? I get past that actually fairly quickly. I do. Doubt. Yeah. For me, in any facet of my life, when there is that questioning myself, I redouble my efforts. So I don't allow myself to languish there for too long. I don't believe it's healthy, and I also don't believe it does anything. I'm a very action-oriented person. And yeah, and wait, things have failed. I've tried things that have been an abysmal failure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's all
You and me
right.
both.
Yeah. It's like, wow, I thought that was a really kick-ass idea, and boy, no one else does. Well, that's
Yeah.
that's a sad turn of events, but all right, you move on. You absolutely move on, and you get past that and keep going. Um, I think having people who you can, I had, when I started a couple of businesses, an informal board of advisors. Gosh, that was super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage people to really consider doing that. You have to be able to be transparent, so you and have a thick skin, and you have to be willing to, you know, share everything, and be willing to hear people question, seriously question, rip apart, in some cases, what you thought was going to be your best idea, or was the plan you and the road you wanted to go on. And then and make sure you have people who have different competencies. And it's not a bad idea, because this is so much my not strong suit, to have a finance person look at it and go, oh my God, that's just untenable.
Right.
That's just like, are you kidding me? And that helps tremendously. It's different than a mastermind. It really is different in a mastermind, which where I believe we're a little more gentle, etc. You're bringing together 4, 6, no more than 8 people. It's too much to really help you very much plot your path and be comfortable saying that's not going to work.
Right.
In a mastermind, you tiptoe around that.
But you're a little bit more encouraging than the mastermind groups.
Exactly. And so that informal board of advisors is a very wonderful thing. I've been on those informal boards, and I have to tell you, I have found being on the board as helpful as having a board, listening to people, listening to you give your opinion on something. I'm going, wow, let me think about that in my own business. Wow, that's very insightful, and I need to mix it up a little.
Well, it's good feedback that you're constantly learning. No matter what your environment, no matter what you're doing, you're constantly learning. But you did say something that I didn't have a question for it, but it does bring up a very pertinent topic, is that an idea isn't necessarily a market, or just because you think it's good doesn't necessarily mean other people are going to think it's good and pay for it. And so what would you advise people to do to test the ideas? What did you do? Did you just go with it and then it didn't work, or did you do some research?
I did. So before I answer it for me, everybody listening, I'm a very tiny business, and even huge global companies with much more money in their research, marketing, and all the rest of those departments fall on their face, introducing a product or service that, lo and behold, no one wanted. And I worked on one. I worked on one for Disney. And it was like, oh my God, they introduced this product. They spend millions, probably tens of millions of dollars, oh, I'm sure, with the product development itself, putting it out there. And after 2 years, pulled the plug. And while we were even working on it, I was working in Salt Lake City with a telemarketing agency who was going out to the marketplace, incoming calls and outgoing calls with this product, listening to what people were saying when they were saying no, and saying, this product should have been put out like 5 years ago. Now it's too late.
Yeah.
It was behind the times. You don't really, and I had been in business a while then, and I remember saying, wow, if Disney can fall down, wow, I feel like I have, if I do it, one can understand. So I am really very much a shoot from the hip person, and understand that most of what I'm coming out with, like even Adrian's network, I mean, I what money was spent, I built a website, which by the way is getting redone. You've told me 100 times. It's on the last week. It's amazing.
That's an inside joke between Adrian and me.
Anyway,
so, yeah.
But that's what it was. It was like, I had a vision for what a new networking community could be like. I honestly didn't talk too much about it to anybody, or I just knew I was kind of fed up with some things. So I had a website built. I opened a PayPal account. I did some things that I didn't have before. I spent a little bit of money and then went out and did it. And lo and behold, I said, oh, wow, people are really enjoying this and joining and paying. I wouldn't do that if I was going to be really investing serious money and time to the exclusion of my other businesses. I would have to have a lot more research done. For clients, I do something that we can do, smaller solopreneurs, etc., on a much smaller level, which is voice of customer research. Having often a third party, because your clients often will be more honest with a third party, having a probing conversation with them, what they like, what they don't like, why they stay, why they go, what they would change. And we can do the same thing even before we have the clients in kind of market research mode. And we have market research people in Adrian's network, and they do a bunch of that. They do. And you can do informal and small focus groups and survey monkey kind of things to at least have enough information that you don't go off kind of empty. And yes, you get to hustle up a little bit of business, but not enough to ever cost justify the time or the money you spend.
Well, and that's vitally important to your point. The more money you have to invest, because when you're starting up, I always feel like, I know you can't get time back, but time doesn't cost you money outlays. Yeah. So you can invest and do as much of the legwork as you can, because really at the end of the day, the more you invest, the greater the pressure is that you have to get a return and do it right. But if you can just invest your time, you can usually survive bad fits and starts.
Right. I think, again, I'm not the methodical business startup person, etc. I'm really more the, oh my God, that's a great idea, let's do it kind of.
Which there's nothing wrong with that, because of your personality and your background. That fits your modus operandi. I'm similar, but a little bit more on the data side, just simply because of my background and in IT and whatnot. But to your point, I started 2 businesses that totally flopped, and then the third one worked, and the third one was started over a game of pool with 2 guys. and we were talking, and we were playing pool, and we were getting hustled by one of our what became one of our business partners, because he was a great pool player. And we basically came up with the whole structure of what we wanted to do in a couple of hours. But that may be the exception rather than the rule to a certain extent. But we did also research, and we did some homework. But to your point, we each put $20 up, because that's what was required, $60 to start a business bank account. And we immediately went to friends and started letting them know we're starting our own company. And that's how we got started.
I love that. So you went to friends, I went to friends. I mean, your community, the people you know. And so it's business friends, it's personal friends, it's not personal friends trying to hustle them up for business, but it's personal friends. Who do they know in business? It's just, again, so much of this stuff now, I must admit, is it's easier and harder. It's easier because we have access to everything. I do remember having to go to the library, the physical library. The libraries weren't open the same kind of hours they are now, too.
Yeah.
Remember, things used to shut at like 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
They weren't open on the weekend. And I'd have to go to the library and sit in the research room and build my own lists. And because I didn't want to buy a direct mail list. I didn't have minimum quantity. I couldn't meet minimum quantity requirements and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff that you can do online now online, you can do on your phone, and you can do it while you're, sitting, waiting for water to boil for tea. You can get on there and do some stuff. It's so much easier. Why it's more difficult is because our competition for a lot of what we do is global. Yeah. It's no longer, it's definitely not shaking hands anymore anyway, but it's no longer in our immediate metro area. It's global. It's all bets are off. What's going to, why am I buying these services from somebody who's over in India or Pakistan or Afghanistan, or I'm doing work with people in Prague, or,
right.
It didn't exist at all. So.
Well, I mean, think about it. The moment you put up a website, depending on how you do it and how you structured it, it's available globally. And anybody can click on the buy button or the button that actually produces a sale. The question would be, are you prepared to work with somebody who's in Prague and
totally.
whose English maybe a second, third, or fourth language and whatnot? So I think, to that end, to your point, doing some homework up front and the tools available to you now to do that homework is probably a good thing to do ahead of time. Because again, I think now there's even a greater risk sometimes with starting your own business than there was when you started, when I started. I think things can get out of control very quickly, and part of that is because of the technology that's available.
I feel like the level of competition is just much greater now. I really do. And you just have to go on LinkedIn and see how many of a particular category there is. It's staggering. And that's why you really do need to know what makes you different. I existed way before there was the word brand. There was no brand. No one said that word. They did for cows and stuff like that, but what people weren't talking about brands. But for me, it was always so bottom line and so easy. Why do people want to give me money for what I do?
Yeah.
Okay. What am I giving back? I didn't use the word value prop. I didn't use the word benefits. Okay.
No industry jargon.
No industry jargon. Why are they going to give me money for what I do? Yeah. What do they expect? What can I give them? And it made it really easy for me to list that out, because I kept it in the most simplistic of verbiage and concepts. Sometimes now, because I go to some of these strategy sessions, and I don't want to cast a wet towel over what people are doing, but really, it's so much more simple than this. It's really more. So let's keep it a little more simple than this. Sure. Why do they want to pay you for what you give them? And why do they want to pay you versus the other person?
Right. There's
a ton of people who do what all of us do. If you're totally unique, no one else does it. In another week, someone will.
Right. Exactly. You're not. There's no real high barriers to entry anymore, especially in service-based businesses. But actually, to your point, you asked why would people want to pay me, but you obviously delivered on what they paid you. And what they hired you to do. So there's the other thing. You have to have clients, customers, but you also have to deliver for those clients, customers.
Yeah, you absolutely do. Because you can start a business and you can have all the bells and whistles and all the great technology behind you and website, blah, 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 blah. And you can get clients. And then for me, it's all about retaining and growing clients anyway. It works very much with my businesses, but it doesn't matter. As far as I'm concerned, you have to deliver. You absolutely have to deliver. In any stage in the process, if you're in a service business and it goes on for a while, you're seeing where there's a disconnect or something like that, you should be the person to raise your hand and say, something's not working here. We need to have a session where we can just talk about it so we can re-engineer what we're doing because we want it to work. That's super important. Yeah, you want, if you start a business, you want to be in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
The way you're in a long haul is having satisfied clients who keep using you and come back for more, and in turn also tell other people, and you get a good reputation, and people are, generally speaking, super happy. And I felt like a little kid yesterday. I said to someone, I forgot the context of the conversation. It really doesn't matter. And she says, "Oh, thank you so much." She goes, "So this is why everybody loves you." And it was like, oh my goodness. But
you made my day. You made my day.
Made my day. But you need to be able to get that back. You want people to say that, write about it. You want to hear it. And so I'm not going to start a business where I'm doing auto repair, okay, where I have to have a YouTube up at all times to make sure I even know where a spark plug is. I'm going to go with my strengths.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm not going to have competition. Doesn't mean you're going to you're not going to choose me. You're going to work with someone else. That's perfectly fine. I work very closely with some of my arch competitors. But don't start a business and stuff. That's a bottom line. Don't start a business and stuff you're not good at.
Yeah.
Duh.
Very true. Very true. Again, an idea does not make a market or a business. So, well, and the question I've always had for you, because like you said, you're a multipreneur. You have multiple service-based businesses going now, but you could just have one of them and be totally fine. What motivates you or motivated you to start more?
Yeah.
To add more to that overburden, that heavily burdened plate that you already carry.
Yeah. So I work real hard, but I'm very organized, very productive. I get everything done. I don't miss deadlines, though as many as I have, etc. So that was never an issue. I like having, I didn't know this at the beginning. I like having multiple streams of revenue. I think it's safe. I really do. I think it's a good thing to have in the kind of frenetic business environment we're existing in now. And there's been, peaks and valleys in business my whole time in business. There've been economic booms and downtimes, and it always seemed to me it's good to have money coming in from another thing. But I wasn't thinking about, I didn't want to have a side hustle being like dog walking or something like that. But I didn't go out specifically. All of a sudden, people started asking me. I write content. I write a lot of my own content. People would say, "Can you write me a blog? Can you write my newsletter?" And I said, no. And then one day I said, wait a minute. This is so stupid. Why am I saying no? Of course I can do that for them. That's a whole business. And that's how that came. The integrated marketing was because people wanted websites, and now I don't mind giving work to other people, and I still do, even though I kind of run a partner in a business that does it, because sometimes not everything works for us. Okay. Right. There are people who need sites that we actually can't do that well, etc. So people again started asking, or I saw that there was a business here that I can cobble together. And the networking was just because I was the president of two groups. I was on the board of two groups. I was unhappy, networking too much, not feeling sense of community, not really getting return on time. And I think I can do this, if not better. I didn't know it was going to be better at the very beginning, different. Okay. And that's still a key line I use for any of my businesses. What makes us different is, because you really, if you're thinking about using my services, you should know that, and it should matter to you. So that's how it came about. It was very organic.
But very practical.
And
Your
practice.
original answer was actually very practical in that, look, I need alternative money streams so that when this particular business maybe hits a slow point, this one will supplement me enough to keep me at a good level. And then obviously the other elements just sort of melded together, or you made them meld together. But it was a very practical thinking on why, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Right. Businesses have peaks and valleys. Business has peaks and valleys in general. The economy has peaks and valleys. And you know, if you can ride out a lengthy downturn in your business and have no, you know, alternative source of income, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. I might have been able to do that. I don't have, I'm a 2-income family, but I chose not to because that's not me. I have to be a breadwinner too. Not a trust fund girl. And I never had a stockpile of millions of dollars sitting in the bank so that I can ride out a couple of years of a downturn.
Sure.
So it seemed practical to me. I'm very practical. I really, really am. And it's and I like the mix up. I like when writing for me is easy and fun. And when it gets very chaotic, I like to kind of retreat and put on content blinders and think about nothing but the words I have to write.
Right.
And so the mix up also keeps me from getting burned out. People will say, how do you handle all this? I think, how would I handle it if I didn't have all this? Yeah. Keeps me from getting burned out on one business path, keeps me from suffering the stresses associated with a dip in business. I'd much rather have the stress associated with too much business.
Yeah. Oh, much better problem to have.
Right? You know,
I think a lot of people, obviously we're recording this in 2020. A lot of people now realize the opposite of no business is so much better.
Yes. Yes.
Regardless of the stress and the headache and the anxiety of having to deliver, much better problem to have.
Yeah. So it was practical for me. It gave me outlets for, you know, I get bored easily. I like to switch off.
I can attest to that. Yeah, I've seen you in like that. Like, okay, I'm done. We got to move on now.
Yeah, I time block, I do all that stuff, but I can say, I just can't write this report anymore. It's not where, you know, so I'm going to write these 3 blogs, and it's my happy place. It's awesome. And I'm glad I get paid for doing it.
Yeah. Well, and again, you just re-emphasized the point that you made earlier in the conversation, is that don't start a business at something you're not good at. Yeah. All your businesses are things, 1, that you're good at, but 2, you like to do.
Yes.
And that goes back to, again, the very beginning where you said about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and passion is one of those key elements. And you can't be passionate about something you hate. I don't think that's humanly possible.
Too many people are in jobs they don't like. Yeah. Too many people, you know, it makes me sad when I see these, like, only 4 more days till the weekend, only, you know, counting down the hours or anything like that. I bumped into someone on, metaphorically, of course, on Monday, where I was walking, and it was a guy delivering I think it was a water heater to a house in my area. And I said, "Good morning. hope you're having a good day or something like that. And he said, well, how many days is it till Friday? You
Yep.
know, and I was just thinking, gosh, it is so sad and so hard to live your life with that thinking. And if you could see your way past that to either carve out and make the job you are doing more pleasant, more enjoyable, more fulfilling, and if you can, for whatever reasons, can you start your own thing?
Mm-hmm.
Can you get another job, but to exist for however many years in something that doesn't give you fulfillment and satisfaction? It is my definition of hell.
Yeah. And I love that you actually said that, because I think a lot of people think that's outside of their control, when really that's one of the few things that they can control, is how, one, you react to your situation, but two, that you can do something about it. A lot of times it's just sort of taking that step. You don't have to become an entrepreneur. I will tell you this, you have to have a good stomach to be an entrepreneur, because you really are thinking about walking to the ledge and just jumping off sometimes. But you do have that kind of control. And I told you things were going to go fast. So I want to get in one more point. It's not a question that I had, because I know it's one of your biggest pet peeves, and I want to end on this. You've mentioned it a number of times. What makes you different? And I've been in meetings where you've tried to pry it out of somebody and they keep giving these rote answers and whatnot, or the answers that they give are no different than the answers that somebody, a competitor, would give. How do you define, or how do you really identify what makes you different from a competitor? So if an entrepreneur or a wannabe entrepreneur came up to you and said, okay, Adrian, you got to help me figure out how I'm different.
Yeah.
Walk through that process.
So for me, because some folks are in fact selling the exact same thing. It's really the exact same thing, whatever that same thing is.
Right.
So then what's going to make you different are intrinsic qualities within yourself. I'll tell you what does not make you different, and nobody should ever say, at the risk of having, if you're in a meeting with me, having me jump up and go stark raving mad. Please do not say that you have great customer service. No one actually says they have bad customer service. That would make you different. That actually should be what you say. I got hung up on yesterday when my customer service rep at a store didn't know the answer, and I could hear him thinking, God, should I try to find it? And he literally hung up the phone. And so I think you have to search within yourself. It's, how you deliver it. What in your background gives you a different perspective on it. We're more than what we are just this exact day. We've got a history of jobs and relationships and education that makes our perspective very, very, very different. Add-ons that you can include, etc. And you have to think about, most important, this is really the most important, because what makes you different has to be attractive to the people you're selling it to. Okay? So for me, I'm very plain speak, in your face, kind of don't pull too many punches, can be known to be a little brash and or a little harsh. I try not to be, but I can get away with it a little bit in person. I'm kind of small and short. I'm not scary. However, there are people who really hate that. They know they really push back on that. So what makes me different is I'm scarily honest, and will risk losing a client if I can get them on the right path. Okay, if you don't want to be on the right path and that scares you to even think about someone being that quote pushy, then maybe I'm not the right person for you. Okay, so you have to know that what makes you different equals an improvement in that person's situation. Come hell or high water, I am going to help you make more money. And that's it. I am not going to help you do anything. I mean, I'll help you go through all the steps to do that. But at the end of it, you've got to make more money.
Right.
That is the goal.
And that is a perfect, piece of advice on which to end our conversation, because we could keep going. I mean, entrepreneurship is just so broad of a conversation, but I want to end it there because that's a good positive note for people to take. And I want to thank you very much, Adrienne Miller, for doing one of my videos.
Fun. You're right. We could have stayed on the whole morning.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. And we could have veered off into a million different topics.
Yes, we could.
You know what? Maybe that's an indicator that we'll have to have a part 2 at some point.
There you go.
So I'll keep that in the back of my mind as I schedule these. But Adrienne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope all the folks who joined us for this conversation found it as enjoyable as I have, and it took some notes. You're world famous for taking notes during conversations. So I hope some folks took some notes. If not, rewind this, go back, take some notes, because there was a lot of good information here if you want to start your own business. And remember, entrepreneurship is a great thing, but really everything falls on your shoulders. So if that's not your cup of tea, just think about it twice. But I can tell you, I love being an entrepreneur, even though I probably won't ever retire. That's not my goal. So
Me too. Me too.
It's a different kind of lifestyle, but it's one that I thoroughly enjoy. So for Adrienne Miller, my name is Sean O'Rourke. Thank you again for joining us on Did You Know That? ? If you like this video or any other videos that you've seen, please subscribe with the bell so that you'll get notified when I post new videos. And until next time, Adrienne, you take care, and everybody out there in the ether, you do the same.
Thank you. It's great.